Welcome to Elizabeth's Stories. Today, we follow Dorothy Mitchell, a devoted mother betrayed by her son and daughter-in-law who reclaims her worth, sets boundaries, and finds empowerment. Subscribe and hit the bell for weekly videos exploring family dynamics and personal triumph. Share your thoughts below. Let's start the story. The air in the kitchen was thick with the scent of jasmine and betrayal. I stood frozen, my hands still clutching the edge of the granite countertop I had helped choose 3 years ago, as Amanda's words sliced through the silence like a blade hidden in velvet. The greatest gift you could give us for our wedding, Dorothy, is if you disappeared from our family, permanently. Her voice was calm, almost musical, but the venom in it was unmistakable. Behind her, the pristine ivory of her wedding dress hung on a rack glowing under the soft chandelier light, like a ghost mocking my presence. I blinked, my heart stuttering, as if it had forgotten how to beat. Amanda's lips curved into that practiced smile I'd come to loathe, a smile that promised warmth, but delivered only frost. My son Michael stood beside her, his eyes fixed on the floor, his silence louder than any words he could have spoken. He nodded, a small, almost imperceptible gesture, but it was enough to confirm that he stood with her, not me. My own flesh and blood, choosing her over the woman who'd given him everything. I should have seen it coming. The signs had been there, flickering like shadows at the edge of my vision for years, but I'd chosen to ignore them to believe in the fairy tale of family loyalty. Now, standing in the kitchen of the house I'd made possible, I felt like a stranger in a story I no longer recognized. The walls seemed to close in the custom cabinets paid for with my life savings, whispering secrets I hadn't yet uncovered. There was something darker at play here, something beyond Amanda's cruel words, and I could feel it coiling in the air, waiting to strike. Let me take you back, because every story needs its roots, and mine are tangled deep in sacrifice and love. 3 years ago, I sold my Victorian home, the one my late husband Robert and I had spent decades restoring. It was more than a house. It was a sanctuary, a tapestry of memories woven with late-night laughter, quiet mornings, and the scent of Robert's coffee brewing at dawn. But Michael and Amanda were young in love and dreaming of a life I wanted to help them build. So I sold it, my heart breaking, with every signature on the deed, and handed over $87,000, my entire life savings, for the down payment on their dream house. They'd promised me a place in their lives, a room in their home, a seat at their table. "You'll always be family, Mom." Michael had said, his eyes bright with gratitude that day. Amanda had nodded, her smile softer then, or so I'd thought, but promises are fragile things easily shattered by greed or indifference. And now, on the eve of their extravagant wedding, a wedding I was financing, I was being cast out like an unwanted guest. The kitchen was silent now, save for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant chirping of crickets outside. Amanda examined her manicured nails, her nonchalance a deliberate performance. Michael still wouldn't meet my eyes. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to shake them until they saw the weight of what they'd just done. But something held me back, a whisper of instinct, a flicker of something I couldn't yet name. This wasn't just about a wedding or a house. There was a deeper game at play, and I was only beginning to see the board. Where exactly am I supposed to go? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. I was proud of that, calm, proud of the strength I didn't know I had until that moment. Amanda shrugged, her eyes flicking to the wedding dress as if it held all the answers. "I don't know, Dorothy. A hotel, your sister's place. Honestly, I don't care where you go as long as you're not here tomorrow." Her words were a blade, each one cutting deeper. But there was something else in her tone, a hint of desperation, a crack in her perfect facade. It was as if she was hiding something she didn't want me to see. "This is my son's house, too," I said, my gaze shifting to Michael, willing him to speak, to defend me, to be the boy I'd raised. He cleared his throat, finally lifting his eyes, but they were cold, distant. "Actually, Mom, it's more Amanda's house now. She's been handling all the finances, making the improvements. You just, you just gave us some money once. Some money, once." The words echoed in my skull, each syllable a hammer against the foundation of my love for him. $87,000, my life's work, my security, my sacrifice reduced to a footnote in their story. I looked around the kitchen at the gleaming countertop, the custom cabinets, the hardwood floors I had helped select. Every detail was a reminder of what I'd given up, and now they were rewriting the narrative, casting me as the villain in their perfect little world. I felt a shift inside me, not a break, but a recalibration, like a lock clicking into place. Something ancient and fierce stirred in my chest, a strength I hadn't tapped into since Robert's death 5 years ago. He'd always said I had a fire in me, a quiet strength that could burn through anything if I let it. I'd buried it under grief and duty, but now it was waking up and it was hungry. "You're right," I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper. "I should go." Amanda's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. She'd expected tears, perhaps, or a desperate plea to stay, something she could later recount to her friends as Dorothy being difficult again. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. "I'll pack my things and be gone within the hour." Michael's shoulders relaxed, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "That's probably for the best, Mom. We can talk after the honeymoon once things settle down." After the honeymoon. As if this was a minor disagreement over table settings, not a betrayal that had shattered the trust we'd built over decades. I turned and walked upstairs to the guest room. Never my room, as Amanda had made clear. Guests leave, after all, and I'd overstayed my welcome in their eyes. The guest room was small, but familiar, its walls adorned with a single photograph of Robert and me taken on our 40th anniversary. His smile was warm, his arm around my shoulders, grounding me in a way nothing else ever had. I paused, my fingers brushing the frame. "Don't worry, sweetheart," I whispered. "I'm not going down without a fight." As I folded my clothes into my suitcase, I heard them downstairs, their voices low but animated, already planning how to repurpose my room. Amanda wanted a yoga studio, her latest obsession, no doubt inspired by some influencer she followed. Michael suggested an office, his tone practical, as if erasing me was just another item on their to-do list. Neither of them mentioned the $87,000, the years of dinners I'd cooked in that kitchen, or the countless ways I'd propped up their lives. It was as if I'd never existed. But there was something else in their whispers, something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. A phrase half caught about the paperwork and making sure it's handled. It was fleeting, but it planted a seed of suspicion. What paperwork? What were they hiding? I'd always assumed Amanda's carelessness with documents was just her usual flightiness, but now I wondered if there was intent behind it. I closed my suitcase and sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing. The house, the wedding, their sudden need to push me out, it didn't add up. There was a puzzle here, and I was missing pieces. I pulled out my phone and dialed Margaret Chen, my lawyer, who'd been handling my affairs since Robert's passing. It was late, but she answered on the second ring, her voice crisp, despite the hour. "Dorothy, it's Saturday evening. Is everything all right?" "No." "Margaret, it's not." I told her everything. Amanda's ultimatum. Michael's betrayal, the way they'd dismissed my contribution as some money once. I told her about the strange whisper I'd overheard, the nagging feeling that something was amiss. Margaret listened. her silence punctuated by the faint sound of her typing. "Dorothy, I've been worried about this for months," she said finally. "The way they've been treating your investment as a gift rather than what it actually was." "What do you mean, what it actually was?" My heart began to pound a drumbeat of anticipation, a pause long enough to make my breath catch. "You don't remember signing those additional documents, the ones I insisted on after you expressed concerns about Amanda's spending habits." I gripped the phone tighter, my mind flashing back to a hurried meeting in Margaret's office papers. Shoved in front of me as I tried to keep the peace with Michael and Amanda. "Margaret, please tell me you protected me somehow." "Oh, honey," she said, her voice warm with reassurance. "The $87,000 wasn't a gift. Legally, it was a loan, and your name is on the deed as co-owner. Amanda never signed the acknowledgement forms I sent over. In the eyes of the law, you own 35% of that house." I nearly dropped the phone. The room spun, the weight of her words settling over me like a cloak. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious." "Amanda kept forgetting to sign the paperwork, and you were so focused on keeping the family together that you never pressed the issue. But the mortgage company has you listed as a co-borrower. The deed shows your ownership stake. It's all completely legal and binding." Through the window, I could see the kitchen light still glowing Amanda's silhouette, moving as she showed off her wedding dress to someone on a video call, her laughter sharp and careless. She had no idea that the ground beneath her perfect life was about to shift. Neither did Michael, who appeared beside her pouring champagne as if they'd already won. "Margaret," I said, my voice steady now, hypothetically speaking, what would happen if I wanted to sell my share of the house? As a co-owner, you'd have every right to force a sale. The other owners, Michael and Amanda, would have the first right of refusal to buy you out at market value, if they can't afford it. The house goes on the market, and the proceeds are split according to ownership percentages. I watched Michael raise his glass, toasting a future he thought was secure. A slow smile spread across my face. Not the warm smile of a mother, but something sharper, something that felt like power. "Margaret, I need you to prepare a notice of intent to sell. I want it delivered first thing Monday morning, Dorothy." "Are you sure?" "Once we start this process, I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I interrupted. "They want me to disappear. Fine, but I'm taking my 35% with me." I hung up the phone, heavy in my hand. Outside, the night was dark, the stars hidden behind a veil of clouds. I sat in my car parked just beyond the glow of the house I'd bought for them, and let the weight of the moment settle. This wasn't just about money or a wedding. There was something else, something they weren't telling me, and I was going to find out what it was. The kitchen light flickered, and for a moment I thought I saw a shadow move behind Amanda, someone or something watching her as closely as I was. I started the car, the engine's hum, a promise of things to come. They thought they could erase me, but they were about to learn that some ghosts don't vanish so easily. The guest room door clicked shut behind me, sealing me in a cocoon of silence that felt both suffocating and strangely liberating. The air was heavy with the scent of lavender from a sachet I'd tucked into the dresser months ago, a small rebellion against Amanda's insistence that this wasn't my room. "Guests don't leave traces," she'd said once, her tone light, but cutting as if my existence here was a stain she couldn't wait to scrub away. Now, as I stood in the dim glow of a single lamp, her words echoed alongside the more recent ones. "Disappear from our family, permanently." I set my suitcase on the bed, its leather edges worn from years of carrying my life from one place to another. My fingers trembled as I opened it, not from fear, but from something fiercer, a spark igniting deep within me, a flame I hadn't felt since Robert's death. It was as if his spirit lingered in this room, urging me to remember who I was before I became the mother who gave too much, the widow who loved too blindly. I glanced at his photograph on the nightstand, his warm eyes steady and knowing. "I'm still here, sweetheart." I whispered, my voice steady, despite the ache in my chest, "and I'm not going anywhere without a fight." Downstairs, their voices floated up through the floorboards, low and conspiratorial. Amanda's laughter was sharp, a blade wrapped in silk, while Michael's murmurs were softer, placating. They were planning something, rearranging my room, yes, but there was more to it. I caught fragments of their conversation, the papers. "Before she figures it out, we need to be careful." My pulse quickened. What papers? What were they hiding? The seed of suspicion planted in the kitchen grew roots, curling around my thoughts like ivy. This wasn't just about ingratitude or a wedding. There was a secret buried in this house, and I was determined to unearth it. I began packing my movements deliberate, each folded sweater, a step toward reclaiming my power. The guest room was sparse, a temporary space that Amanda had ensured felt impermanent. No personal touches, no photographs, except Robert's. No trace of the woman who'd poured her life savings into this house. The $87,000 I'd given them wasn't just money. It was the Victorian home Robert and I had restored board by board, memory by memory. It was the garden where we'd planted roses, the porch where we'd watched sunsets, the life we'd built together. I'd sold it for them, for Michael's future, for the promise of family. And now they were rewriting me out of the story as if I'd never existed. As I packed my mind, replayed the past 3 years, the first year had been hopeful. Michael's gratitude, Amanda's smiles, the dinners we'd shared in that gleaming kitchen. But the cracks had appeared quickly. Amanda's spending grew reckless, designer bags, weekend getaways, a new car she didn't need. Michael, always eager to please her, never questioned it. When I gently suggested they budget, Amanda's eyes would narrow, her voice turning saccharine. "We're fine, Dorothy. Don't worry about us." But I did worry, and I paid groceries here, a utility bill, their car repairs when their credit cards maxed out. I told myself it was temporary, that they'd find their footing. I told myself I was helping my son. Now, standing in this room, I saw it for what it was, not help, but enablement. I'd been their safety net, catching them every time they fell, and in doing so, I'd let them forget how to stand. The realization stung, but it also sharpened my resolve. I wasn't just leaving this house. I was leaving behind the version of myself who'd let love blind her to disrespect. I paused, my hand resting on a scarf Robert had given me, its silk soft against my fingers. A memory flickered, him wrapping it around my shoulders during a chilly evening walk, his laughter warm against the autumn air. "You're stronger than you know, Dot," he'd said. I hadn't believed him then, but now, with Amanda's words still burning in my ears, I felt that strength stirring, a quiet force that had been dormant too long. The whispers downstairs grew louder, more urgent. I crept to the door and cracked it open, straining to hear. "She can't know," Amanda said, her voice low but insistent. "If she finds out before the wedding, it's over." Michael's response was muffled, but I caught the word documents. My heart thudded. Documents. The same word I had overheard in the kitchen. Were they talking about the house, the money, or something else entirely? The air felt charged, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to act. I closed the door softly and returned to my packing, my mind racing. Whatever they were hiding, it was connected to the $87,000, to the house, to me. I thought of Margaret Chen's words on the phone. The $87,000 wasn't a gift. Legally, it was a loan. and your name is on the deed as co-owner. The revelation had been a lifeline, a piece of armor I hadn't known I was wearing. But now, with this new hint of secrecy, I wondered what else I'd missed. Had Amanda deliberately avoided signing those papers? Was there a reason beyond carelessness? The questions swirled, each one a thread in a tapestry of deceit. I was only beginning to unravel. I zipped my suitcase and sat on the bed, Robert's photograph watching me. "What do I do now?" I asked him, half expecting an answer. The silence was heavy, but it wasn't empty. It carried the weight of 43 years of marriage, of a man who'd loved me fiercely and taught me to love myself just as fiercely. I closed my eyes, and for a moment I swore I felt his hand on mine, steady and warm. When I opened them, the room was unchanged, but I was not. I was Dorothy Mitchell, and I was done being invisible. I stood, my suitcase in hand, and took one last look around the room. The lavender sachet, the photograph, the neatly made bed, it was all I'd leave behind. But there was something else in the air, a faint hum, like the house itself was whispering to me. I glanced at the closet, a narrow door I'd rarely opened. Amanda had insisted it was for storage, filled with old boxes and forgotten things. But now, with her words about documents echoing in my mind, I wondered. I set the suitcase down and crossed to the closet, my footsteps muffled on the carpet. The door creaked as I opened it, revealing a jumble of cardboard boxes, dusty coats, and a small safe tucked in the corner. My breath caught. A safe I'd never seen it before, never been told it existed. It was small, black, with a digital keypad that glowed faintly in the dim light. My fingers itched to try it, but I had no code, no clue what it might contain. Papers, money, something that would explain the urgency in Amanda's voice. I knelt beside it, my heart pounding. The safe felt like a secret, a piece of the puzzle I'd stumbled upon by chance. I tried the simplest code. Michael's birthday, Amanda's, even my own. Nothing. The keypad blinked red, mocking my efforts. I sat back on my heels, frustration mingling with curiosity. Whatever was in there, it was important enough to hide, and that made it important to me. I stood brushing dust from my knees and made a mental note to ask Margaret about the safe. If Amanda and Michael were hiding something, I'd find it. But for now, I had to leave. I couldn't stay in this house, not with their voices plotting below, not with the weight of their betrayal pressing against my chest. I picked up my suitcase and Robert's photograph, tucking it carefully into my bag. His smile was my anchor, my reminder that I wasn't alone. As I descended the stairs, their voices stopped abruptly, as if they'd sensed my approach. The kitchen was bathed in golden light. Amanda and Michael frozen, like actors caught mid-scene. Amanda's eyes flicked to my suitcase, a flash of triumph quickly masked by her usual plastic smile. "Leaving so soon, Dorothy?" she asked, her tone dripping with false concern. "I'm honoring your request." I said, my voice calm but edged with steel. "You wanted me gone. I'm gone." Michael shifted uncomfortably, his hands shoved into his pockets. "Mom, we can talk about this later, okay? After the wedding, when things aren't so crazy." "There's nothing to talk about," I said, meeting his gaze. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes, a crack in the confidence he'd worn like a shield. It wasn't much, but it was enough to tell me he wasn't as certain as Amanda. Good, let him stew. I walked to the front door, my steps deliberate, each one a declaration of my resolve. The air outside was cool, the night sky, a deep velvet studded with stars that seemed to watch me with quiet approval. My car waited in the driveway, a modest sedan that had carried me through grief and hope, and now betrayal. I tossed my suitcase in the back and slid into the driver's seat, the leather creaking under my weight. Before I started the engine, I glanced at the house one last time. The kitchen window glowed Amanda's silhouette, moving as she poured another glass of champagne, celebrating her victory. But there, in the corner of the window, was that shadow again, the one I'd seen earlier, indistinct but unmistakable. It wasn't Michael, wasn't Amanda. It was taller, broader, and it lingered just out of sight, watching. My skin prickled, a chill running down my spine. Was someone else in the house, or was it my imagination conjuring ghosts from the weight of my anger? I shook my head, pushing the thought aside. There would be time to unravel that mystery later. For now, I needed to move. I pulled out my phone and dialed Margaret again, my fingers steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "Dorothy," she answered, her voice tinged with concern. "You're calling again. What's happened?" "I'm leaving the house," I said, my eyes fixed on the glowing window. "But I need you to do something for me. Can you pull every document related to the house purchase? Every email, every contract, every note. And Margaret, check if there's anything about a safe." "A safe." Her tone sharpened, intrigued. "What kind of safe, I don't know yet. But I found one in the guest room closet, and I think it's important. Amanda and Michael were talking about documents about keeping something from me. I need to know what they're hiding." Margaret was silent for a moment, then said, "I'll start digging tonight. Dorothy, are you sure you're okay? Where are you going?" "I'll be fine," I said, and for the first time in years, I believed it. "I'm checking into the Hampton Inn across town. I need a place to think to plan. Can you send me everything you find by morning? Consider it done. And Dorothy, be careful. If they're hiding something, they might not take kindly to you poking around." "I'm not poking," I said, a smile tugging at my lips. "I'm reclaiming what's mine." I hung up and started the car. The engine's hum a steady counterpoint to the chaos in my mind. As I pulled out of the driveway, the house loomed behind me, its windows like eyes watching me go. The shadow was gone now, or maybe it had never been there. But the safe, the whispers, the documents, they were real, and they were pieces of a puzzle I was determined to solve. The road stretched out before me, dark and quiet, leading to a future I couldn't yet see. But for the first time in years, I felt alive, electric with purpose. Amanda and Michael thought they could erase me, but they'd underestimated the woman they'd pushed too far. I wasn't just leaving their house. I was stepping into a battle I was ready to win. And whatever secrets they were hiding, I'd find them. The night was young, and so was my fight. The Hampton Inn's parking lot was a quiet haven, the kind of place where the world seemed to pause, giving me space to breathe for the first time in hours. My car's engine ticked as it cooled, the only sound in the stillness of the night. The hotel's neon sign cast a faint glow over the dashboard, illuminating Robert's photograph, which I'd propped against the steering wheel. His smile was steady, a beacon in the storm that had become my life. I leaned back in the seat, my suitcase in the back, my heart a tangle of anger, resolve, and something new, something that felt like freedom. Amanda's words still echoed in my mind. Disappear from our family, permanently. They were a wound, raw and bleeding, but they were also a key unlocking a part of me I'd buried under years of sacrifice. I wasn't just a mother who'd given too much. I was Dorothy Mitchell, a woman with a fire in her soul, and I was done letting it smolder. The safe in the guest room closet, the whispers about documents, the shadow in the kitchen window, they were pieces of a puzzle, and I was ready to start fitting them together. But first, I had a move to make, one that would shake the foundations of Michael and Amanda's perfect little world. I pulled out my phone and dialed the Sunset Gardens Country Club, my fingers steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. The line rang twice before a cheerful voice answered. Sunset Gardens, this is Jessica. How may I help you? Jessica, this is Dorothy Mitchell. I said, my voice calm but firm. I need to speak with your catering manager about tomorrow's wedding reception. Oh, Mrs. Mitchell, how exciting. The wedding's tomorrow, isn't it? What can we do for you? I glanced at the house in the distance, its kitchen lights still glowing. Amanda's silhouette, moving like a specter in a play she didn't know was about to end. I'm afraid there's been a change of plans. I need to cancel the reception. A pause, then a rustle of papers. Cancel. But ma'am, it's less than 24 hours away. The food's been prepared. The staff scheduled. I understand. I interrupted, my tone unwavering. And I am prepared to pay any cancellation fees. The thing is, I'm the one who signed the contract and put down the deposit. I believe I have the right to make changes. Another pause longer this time. Let me check. Yes, the contract is under your name with your credit card information. But surely you'd want to speak with the bride and groom first. I watched Amanda through the distant window now, adjusting her veil for what had to be the 100th time that day. Her laughter carried faintly on the night air, oblivious to the storm I was about to unleash. No need, I said. The happy couple made it very clear that my involvement in their lives is no longer welcome. I'm simply honoring their wishes. Jessica hesitated, her voice softening. Mrs. Mitchell, with respect, this seems like something that should involve them. I appreciate your concern, I said, a smile creeping into my voice. But this is an executive decision. Please cancel everything. The call ended with Jessica promising to handle the cancellation and send me the final bill. I leaned back, the weight of my decision settling over me like a cloak. It wasn't just about the $14,000 I'd spent on their fairy tale reception, the flowers, the band, the imported champagne Amanda had insisted on. It was about drawing a line in the sand, declaring that I was no longer their bank, their servant, their invisible benefactor. It was about saying, I am here, and I matter. I checked into the Hampton Inn, the clerk's polite smile, a stark contrast to the coldness I'd left behind. My room was simple clean, with a view of the city lights twinkling like stars against the night. I ordered room service, a glass of wine, and a grilled chicken salad, a small indulgence to mark the beginning of something new. As I waited, I sat on the bed, Robert's photograph beside me, and let my mind wander to the safe in the guest room closet. What was in it? Financial records. Proof of some scheme Amanda and Michael were hiding, or something stranger, something I couldn't yet imagine. The shadow in the kitchen window lingered in my thoughts, its presence unsettling, as if it were a warning or a guide. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my reverie. It was Margaret, her email, a beacon in the dark. She'd attached a zip file labeled Mitchell House Documents, along with a brief message. Found something interesting. Call me when you're settled. I opened my laptop, my fingers trembling with anticipation as I downloaded the files. Pages of legal jargon, unfolded mortgage agreements, the deed emails between Margaret and Amanda that I'd never seen. One email dated 2 years ago caught my eye. Amanda had written, "We'll deal with the co-ownership later. No need to involve Dorothy now." My blood ran cold. Deal with the co-ownership. They'd known about my stake in the house, known and chosen to keep me in the dark. Another file was a scanned copy of a letter handwritten from Amanda to Michael. It was dated a month after I'd given them the $87,000. We can't let her know about the lien it read. If she finds out, we'll lose everything. Keep her happy for now, Aileen. What lien? The house was supposed to be a clean purchase, the mortgage straightforward. My heart pounded as I scrolled through more documents, finding a reference to a second mortgage Amanda had taken out 6 months ago, using the house as collateral. My name was on the deed, but I'd never been told never signed anything for a second loan. This wasn't just carelessness, it was deliberate. The room spun the wineglass untouched on the nightstand. They hadn't just taken my money, they'd used my stake in the house to borrow more gambling with my future while telling me to disappear. The betrayal cut deeper than Amanda's words, sharper than Michael's silence. But with the pain came clarity. They thought they could erase me, but they'd underestimated the woman they'd pushed too far. I called Margaret back, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "You found a lien," I said, not a question. She sighed, her tone heavy with sympathy. "I did. Amanda took out a $50,000 second mortgage last year, citing home improvements. Your name is on the deed, so technically you're liable for it. But since you didn't sign the loan agreement, we can challenge it. Dorothy, this is fraud. Fraud." The word hung in the air, heavy and final. "What else did you find?" I asked, my eyes fixed on the laptop screen where Amanda's handwritten letter glowed like evidence of a crime. "There's more," Margaret said. "I pulled some emails from Amanda's account. She forwarded them to Michael, probably thinking I wouldn't see. They mention a plan to transfer the house fully into their names after the wedding. They were counting on you being too distracted to notice." Distracted? I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping me. By financing their wedding, by cooking their dinners and paying their bills. Exactly, Margaret said. "They've been playing a long game, Dorothy. But they made a mistake. They didn't count on you fighting back." I leaned back, the hotel room's quiet hum grounding me. "What about the safe? Did you find anything?" "Not yet," she admitted. "But I'll dig deeper. If it's in the house, it's likely tied to their financial games. I'll have my investigator look into it tomorrow." An investigator? I raised an eyebrow, though she couldn't see it. "You're not the only one who smells something rotten," Margaret said, a hint of amusement in her voice. "I've been watching Amanda's spending for months. There's a pattern, large cash withdrawals payments to unknown accounts. It's not just reckless spending, it's calculated. Calculated." The word sent a chill down my spine, conjuring images of Amanda's perfect smile, her manicured nails, her carefully curated life. What was she hiding, and what did Michael know? The shadow in the kitchen window flickered in my memory, its presence more ominous now. Was it someone involved in their scheme? A creditor, or something stranger, something tied to the safe and the secrets it held? "Margaret, keep digging," I said. "And send that notice of intent to sell. I want it on their doorstep Monday morning." "You're sure?" she asked, her voice cautious but supportive. "I'm sure," I said, my gaze drifting to Robert's photograph. "They wanted me gone. I'm just giving them what they asked for my way." I hung up the room, settling into silence. The wine was still untouched, but I didn't need it. The fire in my chest was enough, burning brighter with every revelation. I opened my laptop again, staring at the email from Amanda, the word "lean" glaring like a wanting. I was about to close it when a new message pinged in my inbox. This one from an unknown sender. The subject line was blank, the body containing only one sentence. "You're closer than you think. Check the safe." My breath caught my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Who sent this? Margaret. A stranger. The shadow in the window. I checked the sender's address, anonymous, a string of numbers and letters that meant nothing to me. My heart raced, the room suddenly too small, too quiet. The safe. It was the key, I was sure of it. But how did someone else know? I stood pacing the room, My mind a whirlwind of questions. The safe, the lien, the shadow. It was all connected, a web of secrets I was only beginning to untangle. I needed to get back into that house, to crack the safe, to find out what Amanda and Michael were hiding. But not tonight. Tonight, I needed to strike first. I picked up my phone again and called Sunset Gardens, confirming the cancellation with Jessica. "Send the final bill to this hotel," I said. "I'll settle everything tomorrow." "Of course, Mrs. Mitchell," she replied, her voice tinged with unease. I hope everything's okay. It will be," I said, a smile creeping into my voice. "It will be." I hung up and sat on the bed, the city lights twinkling outside like a promise. The cancellation wasn't just about the money, it was a declaration, a line drawn in the sand. I was done being their bank, their doormat, their ghost. I was Dorothy Mitchell, and I was taking back my life. My phone rang at 11:47 p.m., the screen lighting up with Amanda's name. I let it ring, savoring the moment before answering. "Hello, Amanda. What did you do?" Her voice was a screech so loud I held the phone away from my ear. "The country club called. They said you canceled our reception, our wedding reception." "Dorothy." I muted the TV, the hotel room's soft hum, the only sound. "I honored your request," I said calmly. "You wanted me to disappear, so I did." "This is insane," she shouted. "There are 200 people expecting dinner tomorrow. You can't do this." "I didn't cancel your wedding," I said, my voice steady as stone. "You can still get married. I just canceled the reception I was paying for. You know, the one costing me $14,000. Silence. I'd never told them the cost, always deflecting when they asked, wanting to be the generous mother, while they remained blissfully unaware of the sacrifices. Now the truth hung between us, heavy and undeniable. 14,000. Amanda whispered, her voice faint. The reception, the flowers, the photographer. "Did you think it was free?" I asked, my tone sharp. "Did you think money just appeared because you wanted a fairy tale wedding?" Michael's voice cut in, strained and desperate. "Mom, this is crazy. You can't destroy our wedding over a misunderstanding about sleeping arrangements. This isn't about sleeping arrangements," I said, my voice rising despite myself. "This is about respect. This is about you and Amanda treating me like a bank account instead of a mother. You told me to disappear, Michael. I'm just doing what you asked." "We didn't mean it like that." Amanda wailed, her voice breaking into sobs. "I was stressed, Dorothy. I just meant for the weekend, so I was supposed to psychically know that permanently meant temporarily." I asked, my words dripping with sarcasm. "My mistake." "Mom, please," Michael said, his voice cracking. "Come back to the house, we can work this out." "The house where I'm no longer welcome," I said, leaning forward, my grip tightening on the phone. "The house where my presence ruins everything. I don't think so." "Where are you even staying?" Amanda demanded, her tears giving way to anger. "That's not your concern anymore," I said. "You made it clear my living arrangements are my problem to solve." I heard frantic whispering in the background, their voices overlapping in panic. "Can you at least call the country club back?" Michael pleaded. "Maybe if you explain it was a misunderstanding." "It wasn't a misunderstanding," I interrupted. "It was a business decision made by the person paying for everything. Your guests can still watch you get married. They just won't get a free dinner. You're being cruel," Amanda cried, her sobs turning ugly. "This will ruin everything. Everyone will think we're broke." I let the word hang in the air, savoring the irony. "Now that you mention it," I said slowly, "without my financial support, you probably will be broke pretty soon. Which reminds me, we should talk about that." What do you mean? Michael's voice was tight, laced with fear. Have you looked at your budget lately? I asked. Do you know how much you spend versus what you make? Because I've been covering the difference for 3 years. The groceries, the utilities, the car repairs. Those weren't gifts, Michael. They were an allowance. And allowances can be cut off. Silence stretched heavy and suffocating. I could almost see them huddled in the kitchen, realizing the ground beneath them was crumbling. What do you want, Mom? Michael asked, finally, his voice small. I want what you offered. I said, my voice cold, for me to disappear, and I'm taking my money with me. I hung up, my heart pounding but steady. The hotel room felt alive, the air humming with possibility. I glanced at my laptop, the anonymous email still open. You're closer than you think. Check the safe. The words sent a shiver through me, a reminder that this wasn't over. The safe, the lean, the shadow, they were pieces of a larger game, and I was just beginning to play. I stood and walked to the window, the city lights a constellation of hope and mystery. Tomorrow, the notice of intent to sell would land on their doorstep, and the wedding they'd planned would unravel. But this was only the beginning. There were secrets in that house, secrets in that safe, and I was going to find them. Amanda and Michael thought they'd won, but they'd awakened something in me, a strength, a fire, a woman they didn't know. And she was ready to burn their world to the ground. The morning sun filtered through the Hampton Inn's curtains, casting golden streaks across the hotel room's beige carpet. I sat at the small desk, Robert's photograph propped beside my laptop, his steady gaze a reminder of the woman I used to be and the one I was becoming. My untouched coffee cooled in its cup, the steam curling like a question mark in the air. The anonymous email from last night stared back at me from the screen. You're closer than you think. Check the safe. The words had kept me awake, their cryptic weight mingling with the revelations about the second mortgage and Amanda's handwritten letter, a lien, a plan to cut me out, a safe hidden in the guest room closet. The pieces were falling into place, but the puzzle was far from complete. My phone buzzed, Michael's name flashing on the screen. I let it ring, each chime a small victory, a reminder that I was no longer at their beck and call. The voicemail notification followed, his voice strained and desperate. Mom, please. We need to talk. The wedding's in a few hours and everything's falling apart. Call me back. I deleted it without a second thought. Let him stew. Let them both feel the weight of their choices. I opened Margaret's latest email, a detailed report on the second mortgage Amanda had taken out. $50,000 secured against the house I co-owned without my knowledge or consent. The documents were damning Amanda's signature, Michael's too, but mine was conspicuously absent. Fraud. Margaret had called it, and the word burned in my chest, fueling the fire that had been smoldering since Amanda's ultimatum. But there was more. Margaret had found a trail of payments small but consistent to an account labeled consulting services. No name, no address, just a P.O. box in a neighboring town. It was another thread in the web of secrets, and I was determined to pull it until the whole thing unraveled. A knock on the door startled me, sharp and insistent. I glanced at the clock, 9:00 a.m. The wedding was 5 hours away, and Michael was here, his silhouette visible through the peephole, his tuxedo shirt wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow. He looked like a man who hadn't slept, a man whose world was crumbling. Good. I opened the door but didn't invite him in, letting the threshold stand as a barrier between us. Mom, please, he said, his voice raw. We need to talk. Shouldn't you be getting ready for your big day? I asked. My tone cool, my arms crossed. That's what I need to talk about. He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes darting nervously. Amanda's locked herself in the bathroom. She's having a breakdown. Her mother's threatening to fly back to California. The whole thing's falling apart. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, my voice steady despite the flicker of sympathy that threatened to surface. I hope you work it out, work it out. His voice rose a mix of disbelief and anger. Mom, you destroyed our wedding. You canceled the reception. No, Michael, I said, stepping forward, my gaze locking onto his. I removed my financial support from a wedding for people who told me to disappear. There's a difference. He pushed past me into the room, and I led him curious to see how far he'd dig his own grave. He paced his hands, clenched his eyes wild. This is insane, Mom. Over what? A misunderstanding about where you'd sleep. I closed the door, the click loud in the quiet room. Sit down, Michael. My voice was low, commanding, and something in it made him obey. He sank onto the edge of the bed. His shoulders slumped while I remained standing, looking down at my 42-year-old son, who was finally starting to see the consequences of his actions. This isn't about sleeping arrangements. I said, my words deliberate, each one, a stone in the wall I was building between us. This is about respect. This is about gratitude. This is about treating the woman who made your life possible like a human being instead of an inconvenience. We've always treated you well, he said, but his voice lacked conviction, his eyes avoiding mine. Have you... I stepped closer, my shadow falling over him. When was the last time you asked about my life, my interests, my feelings? When was the last time you invited me somewhere because you wanted my company, not because you needed my money? He opened his mouth, then closed it. His silence, a confession. I pressed on my voice, steady but sharp. When was the last time you called just to talk? When was the last time you remembered my birthday without a reminder? When was the last time you treated me like your mother instead of your personal bank? That's not fair, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Not fair. I laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the small room. Let's talk about fair, Michael. In the past 3 years, how much money have I given you and Amanda? He shrugged, his eyes fixed on the carpet. I don't know. A few thousand here and there for emergencies. $37,000, I said. And his head snapped up his face, paling. That's on top of the $87,000 for the house down payment. That's $124,000, Michael. More than most people make in 2 years. We were always planning to pay you back, he stammered. But the lie was thin, brittle. Were you? I leaned forward, my voice low and cutting. Because Amanda's been shopping for a new car. You've been looking at vacation packages to Europe. Neither of you has mentioned paying me back even once. He slumped forward, his head in his hands. And for a moment, I saw the boy he used to be, the one who'd run to me with scraped knees, who'd drawn me lopsided hearts on Mother's Day. But that boy was gone, replaced by a man who'd let his wife's greed and his own weakness turn him against me. I wanted to reach out to comfort him, but the fire in my chest burned hotter than my love. What do you want from me, Mom? He asked, his voice small, defeated. I want you to understand that I'm not your ATM. I said my words measured but unyielding. I want you to understand that kindness and generosity aren't infinite. And I want you to understand that when you treat someone badly enough for long enough, eventually they stop caring about your problems. So you're punishing us by ruining our wedding day, he said, his tone accusing, as if my setting boundaries was a crime. No, Michael, I said, sitting across from him, my gaze steady. I'm protecting myself from financial abuse. You've conditioned me to believe my only value to your family is monetary. You've trained me to expect crumbs of affection in exchange for major financial contributions. You've made me feel guilty for having needs, while you take everything I offer for granted. Financial abuse. He scoffed, but his eyes betrayed his uncertainty. That's ridiculous. Is it? I leaned forward, my voice a blade. You and Amanda have been draining my resources for years, giving me nothing but disrespect in return. Yesterday, you agreed when she told me to disappear permanently. After everything I've done, $124,000, Michael, you agreed. She didn't mean it, he said, but his voice wavered, his hands trembling. Yes, she did. I said my words final. And so did you. And you know what? You're going to get exactly what you asked for. He looked up sharply, his eyes wide with fear. What does that mean? I smiled. And it wasn't the warm smile of a mother. It was sharp, edged with the power I was only beginning to wield. It means you better figure out how to pay for your lifestyle from now on. It means you better hope Amanda's parents are feeling generous. And it means you better start looking at apartments, because the house situation is about to get very complicated. What are you talking about? His voice was tight, his face drained of color. I'm talking about the legal documents you never bothered to read, I said, pulling out my phone and scrolling to Margaret's email. The ones that make me a co-owner of your precious house. 35%, Michael. Did you think that $87,000 just vanished into thin air? You can't own part of our house, he said, his voice rising, almost pleading. We bought it. We live there. With my $87,000 down payment, I said, my tone cold. Did you think it was a gift because my lawyer had other ideas? Would you like me to read you the relevant documents? This is impossible, he said, shaking his head. Amanda would have had to sign something. She was supposed to. I said, my smile widening. But she kept forgetting to return the papers. Margaret kept them on file anyway. And now I'm about to exercise my rights as a co-owner. He was shaking now, his hands clenched into fists. You planned this. You've been planning this whole thing. Oh, sweetheart, I said, my voice dripping with irony. If I'd been planning this, don't you think I would have pulled the plug before spending $14,000 on your wedding? The truth is, I trusted you, I loved you, and you betrayed me. The silence that followed was heavy, charged with the weight of his guilt and my resolve. I stood walking to the window, the city sprawling below like a map of possibilities. The anonymous email flashed in my mind. Check the safe in the guest room closet, the lien, the shadow in the kitchen window. They were all connected. I was sure of it. But what was the connection? And who had sent that email? A friend, a foe, or something else entirely? Something that felt like it belonged to the realm of dreams and shadows. Mom, please, Michael said, his voice breaking the silence. What happens now? Now I turned to face him, my gaze steady. Now you have a choice. You can buy out my 35% share at current market value $105,000, based on the house's worth of $300,000. Or we can sell the house and split the proceeds. Your call. We can't afford that, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. We'd have to move. I know, I said, my tone matter of fact. I'm good at math. That's why I have money, and you two are always broke. He flinched, the truth hitting him like a slap. We're not broke, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. We just have a lot of expenses. Michael, your combined income is $8,000 a month. I said, my voice calm but unrelenting. Your mortgage alone is $2,400. Add in car payments, credit cards, utilities, groceries, and Amanda's shopping habit, and you're spending more than you make every single month. How do you think you've been getting by? The money fairy. He stared at me, his face a mask of shock and shame. You've been paying for it. Every month. I said my words, a quiet thunder. Groceries, utilities, car repairs, insurance payments. I've been making up the difference for 3 years. Did you really think it was magic? The hotel phone rang sharp and jarring. I answered, my eyes still on Michael. Mrs. Mitchell, this is Jessica from Sunset Gardens, the voice said, hesitant. I have the bride's mother on another line. She's asking about reinstating the reception. She says she'll pay all the costs if you'll allow it. I looked at Michael, his eyes wide with desperate hope. That's very generous of her, I said, my voice cool. But I'm afraid that won't be possible. Mom, please. Michael started, his voice pleading. I held up a hand, silencing him. You see, Jessica, there are family dynamics at play here that make it inappropriate for me to accept payment from other family members for an event I chose to cancel. Please tell Mrs. Howarth the cancellation stands. I understand, Jessica said. I'll send the final bill to the hotel as requested. Thank you, I said, hanging up and turning back to Michael. Amanda's mother was willing to pay $14,000 to save your reception. How nice for her. Too bad her daughter couldn't manage to be civil to the person who was originally footing the bill. Michael pulled out his phone, his hands shaking. I need to call Amanda. We need to figure out what to do about the house. Go ahead, I said, my voice steady. But when you talk to your wife, make sure she understands something. He looked up, his eyes meeting mine. I'm not the same woman who walked out of your house last night. That woman was desperate to keep the peace at any cost. This woman is done being taken advantage of. You're really going to force us to sell our home? He asked, his voice breaking. I'm going to exercise my legal rights as a co-owner, I said. What you do with that information is up to you. He stood, his movements jerky, and headed for the door. But before he left, he turned back, his eyes searching mine. Mom, I didn't mean for it to get this far. Then why did you let it? I asked, my voice soft but piercing. He had no answer, and the door closed behind him with a quiet click. I sat back at the desk, my heart pounding but steady. The anonymous email stared back at me, its words a haunting refrain. Check the safe. I opened my laptop again, scrolling through Margaret's files, looking for any mention of a safe, a code, anything that might explain its significance. Nothing. But there was another email, this one from Margaret sent just minutes ago. Found something else. Call me. I dialed her number, my pulse racing. What did you find? I asked as soon as she answered. More payments, she said, her voice tight, to that same consulting services account. But this time I traced the P.O. box. It's registered to a man named Victor Crane. No record of him as a consultant, but he's got a history, petty fraud, money laundering connections to some shady real estate deals. Victor Crane. I repeated the name, unfamiliar but heavy with implication. Who is he to Amanda and Michael? I don't know yet, Margaret said, but I'm betting he's tied to that second mortgage. And Dorothy, there's something else. I found a reference to a safe in one of Amanda's emails. She mentioned securing the documents before the wedding. It's vague, but it's there. My breath caught the pieces clicking together. The safe, the lien, the shadow, Victor Crane. Margaret. I need to get into that safe. I said, my voice urgent. Can your investigator get me access to the house? I'll make some calls, she said. But Dorothy, be careful. If this Victor Crane is involved, this could be bigger than just Amanda and Michael. And that email you mentioned, the anonymous one, I don't like it. Someone's watching you. I know, I said, my eyes drifting to the window where the city lights flickered like eyes in the dark. And I'm going to find out who. I hung up the room silent except for the hum of the air conditioner. Robert's photograph watched me, his smile a quiet encouragement. I wasn't just fighting for my money or my dignity. I was fighting for the truth. The safe held answers, I was sure of it. And the shadow in the kitchen window, the anonymous email, Victor Crane, they were all part of the same mystery, a web of deceit that Amanda and Michael had woven around me. But I was no longer their prey. I was the hunter, and I was closing in. I stood my resolve, hardening like steel. The wedding would go on without a reception, and Michael and Amanda would face the consequences of their actions. But this was only the beginning. The safe was waiting, and so was the truth, and I would find it no matter what it cost. The morning after Michael's visit, the hotel room felt like a fortress, its quiet hum a shield against the chaos I'd left behind. The sun crept through the curtains, painting the walls in soft gold, but my mind was far from calm. The anonymous email, "You're closer than you think, check the safe," glowed on my laptop screen, its words a siren call to the mystery unfolding around me. The safe in the guest room closet, the second mortgage, the shadow in the kitchen window, Victor Crane's name. They were threads in a tapestry of deceit, and I was determined to pull them until the truth unraveled. But today, the consequences of my actions would come knocking, and I was ready to face them. My phone buzzed relentlessly, a cascade of missed calls and texts from Michael and Amanda, their desperation palpable even through the screen. I ignored them, sipping my coffee as I reviewed Margaret's latest email. She'd dug deeper into Victor Crane, the shadowy figure tied to the consulting services payments. His record was a patchwork of petty fraud, real estate scams, and connections to a network of offshore accounts. But what chilled me most was a single line in Margaret's report. "Crane was spotted near your son's house last week." My heart stuttered. The shadow in the kitchen window, could it have been him? Watching waiting part of Amanda and Michael's scheme. Or was there something else at play, something darker? I was about to call Margaret when my phone rang again, this time an unknown number. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen, the anonymous email flashing in my mind. Against my better judgment, I answered, "Dorothy Mitchell." The voice was female, polished but strained like someone trying to maintain composure. "This is Barbara Howarth, Amanda's mother. We need to talk." I froze, the coffee cup heavy in my hand. Barbara, the woman who'd offered to pay $14,000 to reinstate the wedding reception I'd canceled. The woman whose daughter had told me to disappear. "I'm listening," I said, my voice steady but guarded. Not over the phone, she said, her tone urgent. "Can you meet me? I'm at the cafe across from your hotel, the Blue Heron. I saw you check in last night." My blood ran cold. She'd seen me. How I glanced at the window, half expecting to see her silhouette in the parking lot, but there was only sunlight and empty asphalt. The shadow, the email now, this too many eyes were on me, and I didn't know who to trust. But Barbara's voice held a sincerity I hadn't expected, a crack in the polished facade of Amanda's family. "Give me 20 minutes, I said, hanging up before she could respond. I dressed quickly, choosing a simple navy blazer and slacks, my armor for whatever this meeting would bring. Robert's photograph watched from the nightstand, his smile a quiet encouragement. "Stay with me," I whispered, tucking the photo into my purse. I didn't know what Barbara wanted, but I was done being caught off guard. The Blue Heron was a cozy cafe, its walls lined with bookshelves and the air thick with the scent of roasted coffee. Barbara sat in a corner booth, her gray hair perfectly styled, her eyes kind but shadowed with worry. She looked like a woman who'd spent her life navigating social crises, but today Her composure was fraying. I slid into the booth across from her, my posture straight, my gaze steady. "Thank you for coming," she said, her hands clasped around a mug of tea. "I owe you an apology, Dorothy, for Amanda, for everything." I raised an eyebrow, surprised but skeptical. "An apology from you," why, she sighed, her eyes dropping to the table. "Because I raised a daughter who thinks the world owes her everything. Because I've watched her treat you like a servant, and I did nothing to stop it." Her voice trembled, and for the first time, I saw the woman behind the wealth, the mother who carried her own regrets. "I appreciate the sentiment," I said, my tone cool, but not unkind. "But Amanda's actions are her own, and Michael's. They're the ones who told me to disappear." "I know," she said, her eyes meeting mine, "and I'm horrified. But there's more to this, Dorothy. Things you don't know." My pulse quickened, the memory of the anonymous email flashing in my mind. "What things?" She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Amanda's been in contact with someone, a man named Victor Crane. I overheard her on the phone last week talking about securing the house and keeping you out of it. I didn't think much of it at the time, but after what you did, canceling the reception, threatening to sell the house, I started putting the pieces together." "Victor Crane," I said, my voice steady despite the chill running down my spine. "What do you know about him?" "Not much," she admitted, "but he's not a good man. My husband, Richard, dealt with him years ago, a real estate deal that went sour. Crane's the kind of person who preys on desperation, and Amanda, she's desperate to keep up appearances." I leaned back, processing her words. The shadow in the kitchen window, the payments to consulting services, the lien on the house, it was all starting to connect. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my eyes narrowing. "Why now?" "Because you're doing what I never could," she said, her voice breaking. "You're making Amanda face consequences. I've enabled her for years, Dorothy. Every tantrum, every mistake, Richard and I bailed her out. When she was 16, she totaled her car driving drunk. We hired a lawyer, got the charges dropped. She never learned. And now she's dragging Michael into her mess, and you're the one paying the price." I studied her, searching for deception, but her eyes were raw, unguarded. "What do you want from me, Barbara? I want you to keep going," she said, her voice fierce. "Don't let them off the hook. Whatever you decide about the house, don't cushion their fall. Amanda needs to learn what it means to stand on her own." I nodded, a strange respect forming for this woman I barely knew. "And what about you? Why not tell her this yourself?" "I tried," she said, her shoulders sagging. "This morning she called me in hysterics, demanding I loan her money to buy out your share of the house. I told her no. For the first time in her life, I said no." I leaned forward, intrigued. "What did she say?" "She screamed, cried, said I was betraying her. But I told her if she wanted to own a house, she should have treated the co-owner with respect." Barbara reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. "I'm flying back to California tomorrow. If you ever need someone who understands what it's like to love an ungrateful child, call me." I took the card, my fingers brushing the embossed letters. "Thank you, Barbara," I said, and I meant it. Her support was unexpected, a light in the fog of betrayal that had clouded my world. As she left, I sat back, the cafe's hum fading into the background. Barbara's words confirmed what I'd suspected. Amanda and Michael were entangled with Victor Crane, and the safe in the guest room held the key to their secrets. But who had sent the anonymous email? And what was the shadow I'd seen? The questions swirled, each one a spark in the fire of my resolve. My phone rang again, this time a local number I didn't recognize. I answered, my voice cautious. "Hello, Mrs. Mitchell. This is Detective Rodriguez with the Virginia Beach Police Department, a calm professional voice said. I'm calling about a report we received regarding financial elder abuse. My blood went cold, my grip tightening on the phone. I'm sorry, what? We had a call from someone claiming that family members have been financially exploiting you and that you might be experiencing cognitive decline, he said. They requested a welfare check. Those manipulative little snakes. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that echoed in the cafe. Detective, I can assure you I'm in full possession of my mental faculties. In fact, I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. That's good to hear. He said, his tone neutral but attentive. But we need to follow up on these reports. Would you be available to meet tomorrow morning? Absolutely, I said, my mind racing. In fact, I have a lot to discuss with you about financial abuse, just not the kind my family reported. We scheduled a meeting for 900 a.m. at the police station. As I hung up, fury surged through me, hot and clarifying. Amanda and Michael had stooped to accusing me of mental instability, a desperate ploy to discredit me and protect their secrets. But they'd miscalculated. They'd awakened a woman who was done playing their game. I returned to the hotel, my mind a whirlwind of plans and possibilities. I opened my laptop, pulling up Margaret's files again, searching for any clue about the safe or Victor Crane. A new email from her waited in my inbox, time-stamped an hour ago. Investigator found something. Call me ASAP. I dialed her number, my heart pounding. What did you find? I asked as soon as she answered. The safe, she said, her voice tense. My investigator got into the house this morning posing as a utility worker. It's a high-security model biometric lock fingerprint access. Amanda's prints, likely Michael's too. But here's the kicker. There's a hidden compartment in the guest room closet behind the safe. He couldn't open it without tipping them off, but he saw papers inside. Financial documents, maybe contracts. My breath caught. Contracts with Victor Crane. Possibly, she said. And Dorothy, there's more. The investigator saw someone outside the house last night, a man matching Crane's description. Tall, broad-shouldered, lingering near the kitchen window. The shadow. My skin prickled, the memory of that indistinct figure vivid in my mind. Victor Crane was watching them, I said, my voice low. Or me. Could be either, Margaret said. But Dorothy, this is getting dangerous. Crane's not just a con artist. He's got ties to people who don't play nice. If he's involved with Amanda and Michael, they're in over their heads. I need to get into that safe, I said, my voice steady despite the fear creeping in. Can your investigator get me access? Not without a warrant, she said, but I'm working on it. In the meantime, the notice of intent to sell is ready. It'll be delivered to their doorstep tomorrow morning. Good, I said, my eyes drifting to Robert's photograph. Let them feel the walls closing in. I hung up the room, settling into silence. The shadow, the safe, Victor Crane. They were all pieces of a puzzle, but the picture was still unclear. Was Crane manipulating Amanda and Michael, or were they willing partners in his scheme? And who had sent that anonymous email urging me to check the safe? The questions gnawed at me, but they also fueled me. I wasn't just fighting for my money or my dignity. I was fighting for the truth. My phone buzzed again, Amanda's name flashing on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, her voice shrill and tearful. Dorothy, this is insane. Normal people don't destroy their families' lives over hurt feelings. We're worried about you. Maybe you need to see someone. Get some help. Michael thinks you're having a breakdown. I laughed, the sound echoing in the quiet room. A breakdown. No, Amanda. This was a breakthrough. I forwarded the voicemail to Margaret, adding a note. Evidence of their tactics. Save this. Then I stood pacing the room, my mind racing. They thought they could paint me as unstable, but I was sharper than ever. The safe held the answers, and I was going to get them one way or another. The day of the wedding passed in a blur of news reports and frantic messages. The local channel aired footage of Amanda in her wedding dress, crying on the steps of Sunset Gardens, her veil askew, her perfect facade shattered. The reporter didn't name names, but the story was clear: a lavish wedding derailed by a last-minute cancellation. I watched from the hotel restaurant, sipping a glass of wine, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. I hadn't wanted this, not exactly, but they'd left me no choice. Another knock on my door came that evening, softer this time, hesitant. I checked the peephole, expecting Michael, but it was Barbara again, her face pale, her eyes wide with urgency. I opened the door, my guard up. "Barbara, what are you doing here? I had to come back," she said, stepping inside, without waiting for an invitation. "Something's wrong, Dorothy." Amanda called me an hour ago, hysterical. She said someone was in the house last night, someone who wasn't supposed to be there. My heart skipped a beat. The shadow. I said the words, slipping out before I could stop them. Her eyes widened. "You saw it too." I nodded, my mind racing. "In the kitchen window the night I left. Tall, broad-shouldered. I thought it was my imagination, but now, it's not," she said, her voice trembling. "Amanda found a note in the mailbox this morning. No signature, just a typed message. 'You can't hide forever. Pay what you owe.' She thinks it's from a creditor, but I'm not so sure." "Victor Crane," I said, my voice low. "He's been watching them. Margaret's investigator saw him near the house." Barbara's face paled further. "Dorothy, what have they gotten themselves into? I don't know." I said, my mind spinning. "But I'm going to find out. There's a safe in the guest room closet, Barbara. It's got a biometric lock, and there are documents inside, maybe contracts with Crane. I need to get in there." She nodded, her resolve mirroring mine. "I'll help you. Amanda's my daughter, but she's crossed a line. If she's mixed up with someone like Crane, she needs to face the consequences." I studied her, searching for any hint of deception, but her eyes were steady, her hands trembling with a mother's fear. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "You could walk away, let them deal with it. Because I've spent 39 years enabling her," she said, her voice breaking. "And it's turned her into someone I don't recognize. You're giving her a chance to change Dorothy. Don't stop now." I nodded, a strange alliance forming between us. "I won't," I said, "but I need your help. Can you get me into the house? I need to see that safe." "I'll try," she said. "Amanda's staying at a friend's tonight, too, upset to go home. Michael's at the house, but I can distract him. Tomorrow, after your meeting with the detective." "Deal," I said, my heart pounding with anticipation. The safe, the shadow, the note, they were all converging, and I was at the center of it. I wasn't just fighting for my share of the house anymore. I was fighting for the truth, for the woman I'd forgotten how to be. The next morning, I walked into the Virginia Beach Police Department, my financial files tucked under my arm, Robert's photograph in my purse like a talisman. Detective Rodriguez was younger than I'd expected, with sharp eyes and a patient demeanor that put me at ease. We sat in a small office, the air thick with the scent of coffee and paperwork. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said, his voice calm but professional. "The person who called us seemed genuinely concerned about your welfare." "I'm sure they did," I said, my tone dry. "My daughter-in-law is very good at sounding concerned when it suits her." I spread my bank statements across his desk, check after check, wire transfers. Credit card payments a trail of $124,000 I'd given Michael and Amanda over 3 years. "This is what financial abuse looks like, Detective. Not me losing my mind, but them draining my resources while treating me like I don't exist. His eyebrows rose as he examined the documents, his pen scratching notes. This is substantial, he said carefully. And you say they accused you of cognitive decline. I played Amanda's voicemail, her voice shrill and accusing. Normal people don't destroy their families' lives over hurt feelings. We're worried about you. I watched Rodriguez's expression harden his pen, pausing. Has there been any history of cognitive issues, he asked. None, I said, my voice firm. I manage my own finances, drive myself, live independently. The only thing that's changed is that I stopped letting them take advantage of me. I showed him the house documents, Margaret's emails, the evidence of the second mortgage. I'm a legal co-owner of their property, I said, and I canceled the wedding reception because I was paying for it and they told me to disappear. I'm protecting my assets, detective, not having a breakdown. He nodded, his expression thoughtful. This looks like a clear case of manipulation. I'll close the welfare check as unfounded, but I'd like to look into this second mortgage. If you didn't sign for it, that's potential fraud. Do it, I said, my voice steady. And if you hear anything about a man named Victor Crane, let me know. He's involved, and I want to know how. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow but didn't press. I'll keep that in mind. In the meantime, here's some information on elder financial abuse resources just in case. I've got it handled, I said, standing. But thank you. As I left the station, my phone buzzed again, Michael. I answered, this time ready to face him. Mom, the police called. He said, his voice tight. They said they're not pursuing the welfare check. That's because I'm not the one being abused. I said, my tone cold. You and Amanda have been draining my resources for years while giving me nothing but disrespect. The detective was very interested in my documentation. Are you threatening us? He asked, his voice shaking. I'm informing you that your tactics aren't working, I said. We can talk, but not at the house I co-own, and not until Amanda apologizes. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Margaret's office. Bring a realistic proposal for the house situation. He hesitated, then said, okay, we'll be there. I hung up, my heart pounding with a mix of triumph and anticipation. The safe, the shadow Victor Crane, they were all waiting, and I was closer than ever to the truth. Barbara's offer to help the detective's interest, the anonymous email, they were signs that the tide was turning. I wasn't just Dorothy Mitchell, the betrayed mother. I was a force, a fire, and I was ready to burn through their lies. The clock in Margaret Chen's law office ticked like a metronome, each second a heartbeat in the tense silence that filled the room. I sat at the polished mahogany table, my hands folded. Robert's photograph tucked in my purse like a talisman. Across from me, Michael and Amanda sat side by side, their faces a study. In contrast, Michael's pale and drawn, Amanda's flushed with barely contained fury. Margaret sat at the head of the table, her expression calm, but unyielding, a stack of documents neatly arranged before her. Outside, the Virginia Beach skyline shimmered under a midday sun, but in here, the air was thick with the weight of truth and consequence. I'd spent the morning reviewing Margaret's files and the investigator's report. The safe in the guest room closet, with its biometric lock and hidden compartment, loomed large in my mind. The anonymous email, "You're closer than you think. Check the safe," had become a mantra, a reminder that answers were within reach. Victor Crane's shadow lingered too, his name tied to the mysterious payments, and the note Amanda had found. You can't hide forever. Pay what you owe. The pieces were aligning, but the puzzle was still incomplete, and today's meeting was my chance to force some clarity. Margaret cleared her throat, breaking the silence. We're here to discuss the ownership of the property at 1427 Ocean View Drive, she said, her voice crisp. Dorothy, as a 35% co-owner, has the legal right to demand a sale of the property or to be bought out at market value. Michael, Amanda, have you prepared a proposal? Amanda's eyes flashed, her manicured nails digging into the table. This is ridiculous, she snapped. That house is ours. We live there. Dorothy gave us the money for it. Gave, I said, my voice low but sharp, cutting through her outburst. Let's be clear, Amanda. I provided $87,000 for the down payment, which was documented as a loan, not a gift. My name is on the deed. I'm a co-owner, whether you like it or not. That's not how it works, Amanda said, her voice rising. You can't just come in and ruin our lives because you're upset about a stupid comment. Michael put a hand on her arm, his voice quiet but strained. Amanda, let's just hear her out. I leaned forward, my gaze locking onto hers. A stupid comment. You told me to disappear from your family permanently. You accused me of having a breakdown to the police. You've been taking my money for years while treating me like a burden. That's not a comment, Amanda. That's a pattern. She flinched, her bravado faltering, but her eyes still burned with defiance. Michael, however, looked like a man staring into an abyss. Mom, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, what do you want? I want. What's fair? I said, my voice steady, the fire in my chest burning bright. I want my share of the house, either through a sale or a buyout. And I want the truth about what you've been hiding. Amanda's eyes widened, a flicker of fear crossing her face. Hiding? We're not hiding anything. I smiled, a sharp, knowing smile that made her shift uncomfortably. Really? Then why did you take out a $50,000 second mortgage without my consent? Why are there payments to a consulting services account tied to Victor Crane, and what's in the safe in the guest room closet? The room went still, the air heavy with the weight of my words. Michael's face drained of color, his hands trembling. Amanda's mouth opened, then closed, her eyes darting to Michael as if pleading for rescue. Margaret leaned forward, her pen poised over her notepad. Victor Crane, she said, her voice calm but laced with curiosity. Care to explain? I don't know what you're talking about, Amanda said, her voice high and brittle. There's no safe. And who's Victor Crane? I pulled out a printed copy of Margaret's report, sliding it across the table. This is a record of payments from your joint account to a P.O. box, registered to Victor Crane, a man with a history of fraud and money laundering. You've been wiring him thousands of dollars over the past year. Care to tell me why? Michael's eyes widened, his gaze fixed on the paper. Amanda, he said, his voice shaking. What is this? It's nothing, she snapped. But her hands were trembling now, her perfect facade cracking. It's just business expenses, renovations. You know how expensive the house is. Renovations. I said, my voice cold. The house I helped buy is already perfect, and I'm pretty sure business expenses don't involve a man like Crane or a secret safe with a biometric lock. Amanda's face went pale, her lips parting in shock. Michael turned to her, his voice low but urgent. There's a safe in our house. Why didn't you tell me? It's not a big deal, she said, her voice faltering. It's just for important documents, jewelry, things like that. Then open it. I said, my voice steady but unyielding. If it's no big deal, let's see what's inside. The silence that followed was deafening. Amanda's eyes darted to the door as if she might bolt, but Margaret's calm presence kept her pinned. Dorothy has a right to know what's in that safe, Margaret said. As a co-owner of the property, anything stored there could impact her legal interests. I don't have the key. Amanda stammered, her voice barely audible. It's biometric, I said, my tone cutting. Your fingerprint is the key, or Michael's. Shall we go to the house now? Michael's face crumpled, his hands clenching into fists. Amanda, what the hell is going on? Who is Victor Crane? She looked away, her jaw tight, her silence a confession. I leaned back, my heart pounding, but my resolve unshaken. The safe, the payments, the shadow, they were all connected, and Amanda's reaction confirmed it. But I wasn't here to unravel the mystery just yet. I was here to set boundaries to reclaim what was mine. Let's focus on the house. I said, my voice calm but firm. You have two options. Option 1, you buy out my 35% share at market value, which is $105,000 based on the current appraisal. Option 2, we sell the house, split the proceeds according to ownership, and you find somewhere else to live. We can't afford $105,000, Michael said, his voice breaking. You know that. Then we sell, I said, my tone matter of fact. The house is worth $300,000. My share would be $105,000 minus any fees. You'd get the rest assuming you can cover the second mortgage you took out behind my back. Amanda's eyes filled with tears, but they were angry tears, not remorseful ones. You're heartless, she said, her voice shaking. You're destroying our lives. No, I said, leaning forward, my gaze locking onto hers. You destroyed your own lives when you decided to treat me like a cash machine. You took $124,000 from me over 3 years, $27,000 for the house, $37,000 for your endless expenses. You accused me of being unstable to the police. You told me to disappear, and now you're surprised that there are consequences. Michael's head dropped, his shoulders shaking. Mom, I didn't know about the second mortgage. I swear. I studied him, searching for the truth. His eyes were raw, his face etched with shame. For the first time, I believed him. Then you should have, I said, my voice soft but unyielding. You let Amanda run your life, Michael. You let her spend you into debt, and you let her treat me like garbage. That's on you. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. Amanda's bravado crumbled her hands, covering her face as she sobbed. Margaret watched, her expression neutral, but her eyes sharp, taking in every detail. There's a third option, I said, my voice cutting through their tears. They looked up, hope flickering in their eyes. I'll sell you my share for $75,000 below market value. But there are conditions. What conditions? Michael asked, his voice hoarse. I leaned forward, my words deliberate. First, Amanda gets a job. A real job with a paycheck, not whatever consulting she's been doing with Victor Crane. Second, you sell one of your cars, the BMW, not the sedan. Third, you live on a strict budget for 2 years, which I'll oversee. No vacations, no designer bags, no dining out until you're financially stable. And fourth, you open that safe right now in front of me and Margaret. Amanda's sobs stopped abruptly, her eyes wide with panic. I can't, she whispered. The safe, it's private. Private, I said, my voice sharp. In my house, with my money at stake. Open it, Amanda, or we go straight to option 2 and the house goes on the market tomorrow. Michael turned to her, his voice low but firm. Amanda, open the damn safe. If there's nothing to hide, just do it. She shook her head, her hands trembling. You don't understand. It's not that simple. Then explain it. I said, my voice cold. Tell us about Victor Crane. Tell us about the second mortgage. Tell us what you're hiding. Her silence was deafening, her eyes darting between me, Michael, and Margaret. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely audible. Victor. He helped us get the second mortgage. He said it was a way to free up cash for investments. He promised it would pay off. Investments. I said, my voice dripping with disbelief. You mean his offshore accounts, his real estate scams? Amanda, you didn't invest with Victor Crane. You got played. Michael's face hardened, his eyes narrowing at her. You told me the second mortgage was for renovations. You lied to me. I didn't lie, she cried, her voice breaking. I thought it would work. Victor said we'd double our money in 6 months, and instead you doubled your debt. I said, my tone calm but cutting, and dragged my name into it because I'm liable for that mortgage as a co-owner. Did you think I wouldn't find out? I didn't know you were on the deed, she said, her voice rising. Victor said it was clean, that we could handle it. Victor, Crane is a con artist. Margaret interjected, her voice steady. And if he's involved, you're in deeper trouble than you realize. Dorothy, we should involve the police. No, Amanda said, her voice desperate. Please, no police. I'll do whatever you want. I'll get a job, sell the car, anything. Just don't sell the house. I studied her, the woman who'd orchestrated this mess, now reduced to tears and pleas. Part of me wanted to walk away to let the house be sold and wash my hands of them. But another part, the part that still loved Michael, that remembered the boy who'd drawn lopsided hearts, wanted to give them a chance to change. Not for their sake, but for mine. For the woman I was becoming, who could be both strong and merciful. I'm not heartless, I said, my voice softening. I'm giving you a way out. Take the deal, Amanda. $75,000, the conditions, and the safe opened today. Or we sell, and you deal with Victor Crane on your own. Michael nodded, his eyes red but resolute. We'll take the deal, he said, his voice firm. Amanda, you're opening that safe. Now. She hesitated, her hands trembling, but finally nodded. Okay, she whispered, but you won't like what you find. We left the office, Margaret driving us to the house in her sleek black sedan. The ride was silent, the tension thick enough to choke on. I watched Amanda in the rearview mirror, her face pale, her eyes fixed on her lap. Michael sat beside her, his jaw tight, his hands clenched. The house loomed ahead, its white facade, gleaming in the sunlight, but it felt different now, like a stage where a tragedy was unfolding. We entered the guest room, the air heavy with the scent of lavender and secrets. The closet door creaked as Amanda opened it, revealing the safe, its black surface gleaming, the biometric keypad glowing faintly. She hesitated, her finger hovering over the scanner, then pressed it down. The safe clicked open, revealing a stack of papers, a flash drive, and a small velvet box. Margaret stepped forward, her voice calm but authoritative. May I? Amanda nodded, stepping back as Margaret pulled out the contents. The papers were contracts loan agreements with Victor Crane's name, detailing a $50,000 debt with an exorbitant interest rate. The flash drive, when plugged into Margaret's laptop, revealed emails between Amanda and Crane, discussing investment opportunities that were clearly scams. The velvet box held a single key, old and tarnished, with no indication of what it opened. This is bad, Margaret said, her voice grim. Amanda, you've entangled yourself with a criminal. These contracts are predatory, and you've implicated Dorothy by using the house as collateral. I didn't know. Amanda sobbed, her hands covering her face. He said it was safe, that we'd make money. You knew enough to hide it. I said, my voice steady. You knew enough to keep it from Michael, and you knew enough to try to cut me out. Michael's face was a mask of betrayal, his eyes fixed on Amanda. You did this behind my back, he said, his voice low. You lied to me, to Mom, to everyone. I was trying to help us, she cried. I wanted us to have the life we deserved. You wanted a life you couldn't afford, I said, my voice cutting through her tears, and you were willing to sacrifice me to get it. Margaret closed the safe, the documents in her hands. I'm taking these to the police, she said. This is evidence of fraud, and Victor Crane needs to be investigated. Dorothy, you're within your rights to press charges. I looked at Amanda, her face crumpled, her dreams of a perfect life in ruins. I looked at Michael, his eyes filled with regret, the weight of his choices crushing him. And I looked at myself reflected in the closet mirror, a woman who'd been betrayed, but was standing taller than ever. No charges. I said, my voice firm, not yet. They take the deal, $75,000, the conditions, and full transparency. If they break it, we sell the house and I'll let the police handle the rest. Amanda nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'll do it, she whispered. I'll get a job. I'll sell the car. I'll do whatever you want. Michael reached for her hand, but she pulled away, her shame too heavy. Mom, he said, his voice breaking. I'm sorry. I should have stopped this. You should have, I said, my voice soft but unyielding. But you can start fixing it now. Take the deal, Michael, and mean it. He nodded, his eyes meeting mine. We will. Margaret drafted the agreement on the spot, outlining the terms $75,000 for my share, Amanda's employment, the car sale, a 2-year budget overseen by a financial advisor, and full disclosure of any further dealings with Victor Crane. They signed their hands, shaking their signatures, a promise I wasn't sure they could keep. As we left the house, I glanced back at the kitchen window, half expecting to see the shadow again. It wasn't there, but the air felt charged, as if the house itself was watching. The anonymous email, the note Victor Crane, and they were still out there, pieces of a mystery I hadn't fully solved. But for now, I'd won. I'd set boundaries, reclaimed my power, and given them a chance to change not for their sake, but for mine. I drove back to the Hotel Margaret, beside me the documents and flash drive locked in her briefcase. You did good, Dorothy, she said, her voice warm. You gave them a lifeline without letting them off the hook. I learned from the best, I said, smiling faintly. Robert always said love means knowing when to hold firm. She nodded, her eyes soft. He'd be proud of you. Back in my room, I sat at the desk, Robert's photograph beside me. The anonymous email was still open on my laptop, its words a lingering challenge. The key from the safe lay on the desk, its tarnished surface catching the light. What did it open another safe? A door, a secret I hadn't yet uncovered. I didn't know, but I would find out. The fire in my chest burned brighter than ever, a beacon guiding me forward. For now, I'd secured my future set boundaries and forced Amanda and Michael to face their consequences. But the shadow, the note Victor Crane, they were still out there waiting, and I was ready to meet them. 6 months had passed since the confrontation in Margaret's office, and the world felt different now, softer at the edges, like a painting left in the sun. I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, a cozy 1-bedroom overlooking the Virginia Beach coastline, the ocean's rhythm, a quiet companion. Robert's photograph rested on the table beside me, his smile as warm as the morning light. The tarnished key from the safe lay next to it, its purpose still a mystery, though its weight felt lighter now, a reminder of the battles I'd fought and won. The fire in my chest hadn't dimmed, but it had settled into a steady glow, a beacon of the woman I'd become. The safe, Victor Crane. The shadow in the kitchen window, they'd haunted me for weeks after the negotiation, each a piece of a puzzle I'd been determined to solve. But today, as I sipped my coffee, the ocean breeze carrying the scent of salt and possibility, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The journey from betrayal to triumph had been long, but it had led me here to a life I'd built on my own terms. My phone buzzed, Amanda's name flashing on the screen. I hesitated, my thumb hovering memories of her tears and Michael's shame flickering in my mind. But I answered, my voice steady, curious. "Hello, Amanda." "Dorothy," she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it, stripped of its usual sharpness. I I wanted to call, to talk. "I'm listening," I said, leaning back in my chair, the ocean stretching out before me like a promise. There was a pause, the sound of her breathing uneven. "I got a promotion," she said finally. "From receptionist to office manager. It's not much, but it's something." "I wanted you to know." I raised an eyebrow, surprised but intrigued. "Congratulations." I said, my tone neutral, but open. "That's a big step." "It is," she said, and I could hear the weight in her voice, the effort it took to say the next words. "Dorothy, I'm sorry. For everything. For what I said, for how we treated you, for all of it." The apology hung in the air, heavy with sincerity I hadn't expected. I closed my eyes, letting it settle, remembering the woman who'd told me to disappear, who'd schemed with Victor Crane, who'd hidden secrets in a safe. "Why now?" I asked, my voice soft but firm. "Because you were right," she said, her voice breaking. "I was selfish. I thought I could have everything without working for it. I thought I could use you, use Michael, use anyone, and it would all work out. But when you canceled the reception, when you forced us to face the truth, it changed me." I opened my eyes, the ocean sparkling under the sun. "What changed, Amanda?" Everything, she said. "I sold the BMW. I'm working full-time now. Michael and I are budgeting. Really budgeting, not just pretending. We're paying off the second mortgage slowly but surely, and we're talking, really talking for the first time in years." I nodded, though she couldn't see it. "And Victor Crane." A long pause, then a shaky breath. "He's gone. After the police got involved, he disappeared. Margaret's investigator found his P.O. box empty, his accounts closed. The contracts in the safe were enough to scare him off, I think. He hasn't contacted us since." The safe. The contracts, the flash drive, the mysterious key, they'd been the key to unraveling Amanda and Michael's scheme, but they'd also been a turning point for me. Margaret had turned the documents over to the police, who'd launched an investigation into Victor Crane's activities. He was a ghost now vanished into the shadows, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he'd been more than a con artist. The anonymous email, the note in the mailbox. "You can't hide forever. Pay what you owe." And the shadow in the kitchen window had felt like something else, something that lingered just beyond my understanding. "I'm glad you're moving forward," I said, my voice steady. "But Amanda, an apology isn't enough. Words don't erase years of disrespect." "I know," she said, her voice small. "I want to make it right. Michael and we'd like to have you over for dinner. Not to fix everything, but to start, if you're willing." I looked at Robert's photograph, his smile a quiet guide. Dinner in their house. The house I'd helped buy, the house where I'd been betrayed. The idea felt heavy, fraught with memories. "Not dinner," I said finally. "Not yet. How about lunch? Somewhere neutral, like the Blue Heron, next week." "Lunch," she said, relief flooding her voice. "Yes, that's perfect. Thank you, Dorothy. Don't thank me yet." I said, a faint smile tugging at my lips. "Show up. Be honest. That's how you start." We hung up, and I leaned back, the ocean's rhythm, soothing the edges of my heart. Amanda's change was real. I could hear it in her voice, but trust would take time, built brick by brick, not handed over like a gift. I'd given them a chance with the deal, $75,000 for my share of the house, Amanda's job, the car sale, the budget. They'd followed through, paying me in installments, sticking to the financial advisor's plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, and for now, that was enough. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Barbara, Amanda's mother. "Dorothy, thank you. Amanda told me about her promotion. I know you don't trust her yet, but you gave her a reason to try. You're a stronger woman than I ever was." I smiled, warmth spreading through me. Barbara had become an unexpected ally, her own journey mirroring mine. She'd flown back to California after our meeting at the Blue Heron, but we'd stayed in touch, sharing stories of our children, our regrets, our hopes. Her support had been a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't alone in navigating the pain of loving an ungrateful child. I set the phone down and picked up the tarnished key, its weight familiar now, though its purpose remained elusive. Margaret's investigator had searched the house after the safe was opened, but the hidden compartment had revealed only the contracts and the flash drive, no lock to match the key. I'd kept it a talisman of the mystery that had driven me forward. The anonymous email, the note, the shadow, they'd all faded into the background, but the key felt like a promise, a piece of the puzzle I hadn't yet solved. I stood walking to the balcony's edge, the ocean stretching out like a canvas of possibilities. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of change, not just for Amanda and Michael, but for me. I'd moved into this apartment, furnished it with pieces that felt like mine. A soft blue sofa, a bookshelf filled with novels. I'd always meant to read, a small garden on the balcony where I grew roses in Robert's memory. I'd joined a community group, volunteering at a local shelter, finding joy in helping others without losing myself. And I'd started seeing someone, a retired professor named Thomas, whose quiet humor and love of history reminded me of Robert, but whose presence was entirely his own. The mystery of Victor Crane and the shadow lingered, but it no longer consumed me. Margaret's investigator had traced Crane's last known movements to a small town in Mexico, but he'd vanished, leaving no trace. The police had closed the case, lacking evidence to pursue him further. The anonymous email had come from a burner account untraceable, and the note in the mailbox had no fingerprints, no clues. The shadow in the kitchen window remained a question mark, a moment that felt both real and unreal, like a whisper from a world just out of reach. I'd begun to wonder if the shadow was more than a man, more than Victor Crane. There were nights when I dreamed of it. A tall figure cloaked in darkness, watching not with malice but with purpose, as if guiding me toward the truth. In those dreams, Robert was there too, his hand on mine, his voice saying, "You're stronger than you know, Dot." I'd wake with the key in my hand, its metal cool against my skin, and I'd wonder if the shadow was a piece of him, a piece of me, or something else entirely. A guardian, a warning, a fragment of the life I'd reclaimed. My phone buzzed again, a new email from Margaret. "Found something about the key. Call me." My heart skipped a beat, the ocean's rhythm fading as I dialed her number. "Dorothy," she said, her voice bright with excitement. My investigator finally tracked it down. "The key, it's to a safety deposit box at First Coastal Bank, registered in your name." "My name," I said, my voice catching. "How's that possible?" "It was opened 3 years ago, right after you gave Michael and Amanda the $87,000, she said. "The bank records show you signed for it, but the signature's shaky, like it was rushed. I think Amanda or Michael forged it, or maybe Victor Crane. The box hasn't been accessed since." My mind raced, memories of that chaotic time, flashing back the rushed meetings, the papers I'd signed without reading, trusting Michael to handle the details. What's in it? I asked, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. We don't know yet, Margaret said. You'll need to go to the bank with ID. But Dorothy, given everything Crane the safe, the second mortgage, I'd bet it's something important. Maybe assets they hid, maybe evidence. I looked at the key, its tarnished surface gleaming in the sunlight. I'll go today, I said. Thank you, Margaret. Be careful, she said, her voice softening, and let me know what you find. I hung up, my heart racing with a mix of anticipation and closure. The key, the final piece of the puzzle, was about to reveal its secrets. I drove to First Coastal Bank, the key heavy in my purse, Robert's photograph beside it. The bank manager, a kind woman named Clara, led me to the vault, her eyes curious but professional. This box hasn't been touched in years, she said, sliding it from the wall. You're sure it's yours? I'm about to find out. I said, my voice steady as I inserted the key. The lock clicked, the box sliding open to reveal a single envelope yellowed with age and a small leather journal. My breath caught as I recognized the handwriting on the envelope, Robert's. I opened it with trembling hands, my heart pounding. Inside was a letter dated a month before his death. It began. If you're reading this, I'm gone, but you're still fighting. I knew you would. I set this box up as a safety net, a piece of our life you could reclaim if things went wrong. The journal has everything, our investments, our accounts, the truth about the house. You're stronger than you know, and I'll always be with you. Tears blurred my vision as I opened the journal, its pages filled with Robert's meticulous notes, details of a trust he'd set up, assets I'd never known about, a $50,000 savings account in my name alone. He'd known somehow that I'd need this, that I'd face a day when love alone wouldn't be enough. The house, he wrote, was meant to be a gift, but he'd ensured my name was on the deed, a safeguard against betrayal. I sat in the bank's quiet room, the journal in my hands. Robert's words, a lifeline across time. The anonymous email, the shadow, the note. Maybe they were just coincidences, fragments of a world that had conspired to guide me here. Or maybe they were something more, a touch of magic. A whisper from Robert's spirit urging me to fight. I'd never know, and I didn't need to. The truth was in my hands, and it was enough. I drove back to my apartment, the journal and letter beside me, the ocean sparkling under the afternoon sun. I called Margaret, telling her everything, and she laughed, a warm, triumphant sound. Robert was a genius, she said. He knew you'd find your way. He did, I said, smiling through tears. And I did. That evening, I sat on my balcony, the journal open in my lap, Robert's photograph beside me. The trust was enough to secure my future, to let me live without fear. Amanda and Michael were keeping their promise, paying me in installments following the budget rebuilding their lives. The lunch with Amanda was scheduled for next week, a tentative step towards something new, not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. The key lay on the table, its purpose fulfilled, but its mystery lingered. The shadow, the email, Victor Crane. They were gone, faded into the past, but they'd left their mark. They'd pushed me to become this woman, strong and unyielding, yet capable of mercy. I looked out at the ocean, its waves, a song of resilience, and felt a peace that was mine alone. I'd lost a version of my family, but I'd gained myself. I'd faced betrayal, uncovered secrets, and walked through fire. And here I was, whole, alive, free. Robert's words echoed in my mind. You're stronger than you know. I was, and I always would be.